All right, welcome back. As always, you're right, it's the CXM experience. And I'm Grad Kahn, CXO at Sprinklr. And today I have a very special guest, Jeremy Epstein. He's currently the CMO at Gtmhub, which is a results management system based on OKRs. And he'll talk about that for a minute or two. But I met Jeremy originally when he was CMO at Sprinklr. Jeremy and I have similar DNA in ourselves, similar experiences, although for me, my experience came later and to a large extent came very much as a result of the amazing work that Jeremy did. So I want to start, Jeremy, by saying thank you for doing such an amazing job as CMO at Sprinklr, because if you hadn't, then, I wouldn't have been able to come and join Sprinklr later on. So I really owe you a great debt. So thank you. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that. But let me frame up today overall. So, you're kind of, I think, doing a really interesting job where you are right now. You've done a really interesting job at Sprinklr. You can talk about some other experiences you've had, but you've got a unique perspective on being a CMO at a very early stage startup, Series A, B, C, D, that kind of stage. There's going to be a different set of things that you have to do at that stage than if you're at a later stage. And it's, I think, a lot tougher at the stages that you're at. So I'd love to first let you introduce yourself for a second, and then let's talk about that. And let's just sort of see what's it like being an early stage CMO and what are the key things you need to think about?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the very kind words. I wish I could take as much credit as you're giving me, but it's a real testament to Raji and the team and the great product and all of the great people at Sprinklr. So I like to say everybody's in marketing. It's just that some of us know it. And, marketing is really the aggregation of all the great work that the product and the success teams do. So I just sort of, that's basically leads into sort of my philosophy of marketing, which is that an early stage, when you're really trying to break out from the pack, the thing you want to do is start building community of people who are like-minded. And that's where, you and I first met, because you were a visionary at Microsoft when we first met. You saw the future that a lot of people didn't see. And so I just saw it as my job is to find people like yourself and others at other enterprises that we were serving, especially in the early days, and just help bring those people together and connect them, because we were all out there on the cutting edge. Now it's obvious that social media has changed the landscape, but back then it wasn't so obvious to many people. And when you're an innovator, it can get lonely. And that's what we saw at Sprinklr, and that's what we see at Gtmhub as people are really trying to change the way that organizations consistently drive results and using OKRs as the best methodology ever invented to do that. But it's tough to change the culture of a lot of these organizations. So all we try to do is let's find those people, let's bring them together, and then let's provide them content to help them do their jobs better. So for me, the only way I know how to do it is build community, provide content to that community, and drive word of mouth to start getting that flywheel started. Because, as much money as you raise, you can't spend your way into giant market awareness. You have to do it. That's the augmentation, not the primary driver. So that's basically the approach.
I love that philosophy. So I want to dig in on that. And you made a good point. Sometimes people say, well, we just raised 30 million or 150 million or $500 million, like whatever. All those numbers are tiny, tiny numbers versus what you actually need to build awareness. And so you're right. Like at almost any stage, community and word of mouth is super important. I think about, say, Google. This is something I remember. I don't know if I've told this story yet.
I'm eager to hear it. Bring it.
Well, I don't have this. I'm not prepared, because if I was really prepared, I'd have this person's name, and this would be a true full revenge story. But this would just be a partial revenge story. So when I was doing one of my startups, and we were admiring the way that Google, and this is like late 90s, we admired the way that Google did its intro. And I don't know if you remember this, but the way Google did its launch is they didn't have a lot of money, and they went to sysadmins. They went to the IT sysadmin open source community, and they spent a lot of time talking about their algorithm and what they'd kind of invented in terms of linkbacks. And that got everyone really excited because it made so much sense and was so brilliant. And so sysadmins at that time were doing a lot of configuring on computers in offices. And so they'd go to an executive's desk and they would be using Alta Vista or Ask Jeeves or whatever.
Right.
Oh my God, Alta Vista. And then they would say, no, you should use Google. And that's a lot of how the groundswell of Google started, was at this that base level. So I was sort of admiring this Google strategy for a company I had called Open Cola, which took a very similar strategy and actually made a fair amount of headway using that strategy. And we did something slightly different, which is we invented an open source soft drink to go along with our software. And,
nice.
and some days I think maybe we should have just been selling the soft drink. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We got a lot of attention. And we were telling a VC at Intel, he's no longer there, but we were telling a VC at Intel that we really loved this strategy that Google had taken. We wanted to copy it, build community, all the stuff you were talking about.
Right.
And he goes, whoa, dude. He goes, Google never made any money. It's never going to make any money for any of its investors. Anyone who put any money into Google is going to lose it all. You use Google as an example with me one more time, I'm never going to invest in your company. So there you go. Not everybody knows everything.
Not everybody can see the future. That's true.
And then Salesforce did the same thing. I think Benioff did a brilliant job in the early days of really, kind of contrasting himself to Siemens or Siebel, excuse me, not Siemens, Siebel, contrasting himself to Siebel, talking about cloud CRM versus CRM, and made a lot of noise, right? And built kind of community around a product that was still early stage. So how do you do it? Those are big examples that worked really well. For every big example, there's 100 examples that don't work well. How do you actually find community? What did you do on Sprinklr? What were the early days of Sprinklr finding people like me? Because I don't know how easy we were to find.
Well, I mean, it wasn't as difficult as you thought, because like the community at that point was, not particularly large. So we actually relied very heavily on the influencers in the space. One of the first tactics that we employed was what we call our social at scale ebook. And we invited 30 of the biggest names in the industry to participate and share their vision of what social at scale, which was an idea that we had coined. It took us about 8 or 9 months after I got there to kind of get to that point. And we had some great input from a lot of people, including Jeremiah Aoyang was very instrumental. So one of the early influencers, and we invited them and we said, look, I don't want you to talk about Sprinklr, but I do want you to explain to the people out there, what does the arrival of social mean for large enterprises? And we invited them into a collaborative ebook. And then wouldn't you know it, they all promoted it to their fans and followers. And that helped us uncover a lot of the people who basically, to sound grandiose about it, we knew we were starting a movement. It was a movement of people who believed that the arrival of the empowered customer was going to change the face of enterprises. And so what I say is, who are the people who share this belief, who share our worldview, and let's figure out ways to uncover them. And, we're basically running the same play at Gtmhub of people who believe that in a world of knowledge workers, that's knowledge economy, that you want transparency, you want focus, you want alignment, that OKRs are the way to do that. But basically you need to have cultures of collaborations around this. Not everybody's prepared for that. But we're trying to uncover those people and then bring them together. So, they sort of say, look, I can see this as a brand that cares about the things that I care about. I mean, one of my all-time favorite comments is we used to put on events that we called social at scale events. And
Raji still talks about those.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he admiringly, like not in a bad way, in good way. He still talks about how awesome those were and how amazing you were at getting people out to those. He usually when he's yelling at me, he'll go on and about how awesome you were.
I've been on the tail end of Raji yelling too, so it's not. I don't have all glamour stories from the Sprinklr days. Got my butt kicked on more than one occasion. But one of the things that we did is I said to one of the core philosophies, and I give Raji a lot of credit for understanding this. And every marketer out there is not always blessed with a CEO who understands intuitively what's trying to happen. We said, look, no one really cares what we say. They care what people say about us. So that was what we tried to take into the event. So I would kick it off for 5 or 7 minutes, just sharing our worldview. And then the rest of the time was all basically user-generated content. We invited customers, we invited prospects, and even once or twice, I invited people who were using our competitors' products to present at our event. And the
Wow.
greatest compliment that I could ever get, and this happened 2 or 3 times, people would come to me at the end of the event and they say, Jeremy, this was one of the greatest corporate events I've ever been to. Like, I learned so much from my peers. I feel like I'm not alone. I saw what other companies are doing. He said, the only problem is you didn't show me your product. And I was like, you're welcome. That's not the point of this event. The point of this event is to connect you with other people. It's to build trust. It's to help you understand that Sprinkler genuinely, passionately cares about this particular movement. And that's what this is for. And so I always love that. And, that's why I wasn't afraid. Like, you're using one of our competitors. I don't care. We're here to educate the audience. And that's the kind of thing that builds trust when they get up to say, we're not using Sprinkler, yet, but that kind of thing. And it was just a great experience, and people loved learning because you're just empowering people through education. You're not ramming demos and ramming slides down their throat. Nobody likes that. I always said, like, I would never put on an event that I wouldn't want to go to myself, and I don't like boring events.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy. It is interesting. I do think that part of the fall of marketing automation, I mean, it's still sort of hanging in there, but I think a lot of the philosophies of marketing automation that were sort of formed in the early part of the 21st century are really kind of disintegrating. Like, you see B2B marketers right, left, and center just not able to hit the goals they used to hit with, white paper downloads and gated content and all that kind of stuff. And I think part of it is that people are just tired of being sold to.
Yeah.
And it's rare to find a company that's got it takes some courage to just have a conversation with someone and not necessarily try to sell them something. It's like you want to try to create a relationship versus try to make a sale. And I think we understand how to make relationships in the real world, but I don't know what happens when we go online and it's like, you want to buy a watch? Like, it's instantaneous. We go straight to the sale. And I think people back off from that. It's too scary.
Yeah, no, there's a little sort of a flip remark I'll say is that the difference between sales and marketing is sales is when you call them, marketing is when they call you. And, nice. I like to quote Peter Drucker. He says, that marketing and innovation are the only two things that drive the business forward, in his opinion. But he says the purpose of marketing is to know the customers so well that the product or service sells itself. And so I always view that as like a challenge. It's like, how do you build a relationship to the point where the prospect feels like you understand their problems so well that they just call you up? And sort of part two to that demo story is I'd say, look, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to say, wow, I really need to do social at scale. And on that day, you're going to call me, and then my account rep will be more than happy to give you a demo of the software. Like, they will be so thankful that. So it's just thinking in terms of, treating people the way you would want to be treated. It's not that hard when you think about it. But you're right. We put on our marketing hats and let's just ram you with all kinds of stuff. And look, I have moments where I'm guilty of that. I definitely fall into that on certain activities, but generally I try to stay away from that because I believe over the long haul, that's the way you're going to win, especially in this market.
So, you're a CMO to an emerging company. It sounds like things are going great, which is awesome. I'm super happy for you. But you're still resource constrained.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, and you will be for a long time. I mean, and it's not a knock against the company. It's just you got to be very thoughtful about how you spend your money. And quite frankly, even when I was at Microsoft, I theoretically had a lot of cash available, but I still felt resource constrained because there were so many things to do. I always had to make choices. So just for people who are listening, let's say someone is, a CMO at a Series A, Series B startup. They're like, boy, it's just really tough. How would you help them think about prioritization? Top three?
Yeah, no.
Key trade-offs?
Yeah, it's funny. I, as you may recall, I also worked at Microsoft once upon a time. And I always tell people that no matter what business you're in, you feel resource constrained, even when you're at Microsoft, when you think you have all the money in the world. But you're right. I mean, I think it's a series of trade-offs. I think it's never forgetting that there's, a person on the other side of the screen. I think that has to be the first thing is how do you invest in experiences? I know you're the chief experience officer. And I think that role, everybody needs to think that way is like, what is the experience? And it's all these little micro moments that together either enhance the brand or detract from the brand. So the first thing is to invest in communicating out that, like I said, everybody's in marketing. We have 100 I think we're up to about 120, 130 people in the company now.
That's great.
Excuse me. There you go. That's authentic. You get a little Pellegrino burp there. That's just trying to keep it real. Roger would be proud. So he told me we're just taking one take.
Yeah, we don't edit this thing, man. This is all in.
We're just gonna go. Hey, real human people occasionally drink Pellegrino and stuff happens. So I think it's like, I've used the all hands meetings that we've had over the last couple months to try to communicate what the brand stands for and how we should have, it's there. I think still on the wall at Sprinkler today, it says people never forget how you made them feel.
It's on the sleeve of every single hoodie we have.
Yeah. So I remember the day we sort of took that and made that our term. And I still fundamentally believe that the Maya Angelou quote is something that should be a guiding for everybody. So number one, as a CMO, I'd say, look, you don't have to do this by yourself. You can leverage every single other person in the company if they understand that what they do affects the marketing function, right? So that's number one, is how quickly the support team responds, how quickly, how easy it is to sign up for the software. All of those things are marketing moments. So you don't need a lot of money for that. You just need to be effective at articulating that. So that would be number one. Number two is I'd go back to, the community idea. Number two is probably being clear about what you actually stand for, getting clear. And that's a hard process. I mean, it took us another 8 months here at Gtmhub to kind of get to a little bit more clarity. And it'll probably take us another 8 months to even get better clarity. And then, like I said, the community and content, it doesn't take a lot of effort to get people together. What it takes a lot of effort to is to resist the temptation you just discussed of putting an event on without trying to ram stuff down people's throat. It's just putting an event on or creating an experience where people say, wow, I actually got a ton of value out of this. This was something that helped me learn and do my job better. Because when you're in an early stage category creating environment and you find these advocates, these champions, these community members, they are out there on the cutting edge. So I view our job as just helping them be successful. I said to our customer success person, our goal shouldn't be NPS. Our goal should be how many of our clients get promoted. That's really what we could do. At one point, we studied it. We did an analysis of people, of sort of our earliest customers. And I remember a year later, 65% of our sort of top 30 customers had been promoted within the past year. Wow. And I was like, that's awesome. We're helping them. That's real partnership in my book.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I've never thought of thinking of that as a KPI. That is brilliant. But I've glanced off the edge of it because I tell people all the time that I think people forget that B2B is a much simpler category than people think it is. Because people are buying one thing. They're buying career success.
Right. Well said.
With a kind of an underlying risk around, will this purchase get me fired? Right. So you need the bar for career success needs to be really long, and the bar for career firing is career ending is going to be really short. But it's a very unusual category because emotionally you're appealing to the same thing in almost every category, which is people are making decisions that will hopefully make them more successful in their jobs, and that's what they're looking for. And I think a lot of companies forget that because they think about speeds and feeds and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, Jeremy, you've been really gracious with your time. I do have 3 last questions. So 2 are really easy, and then the one just a little bit harder. So I'll do the hard one first. So
I'm ready.
If you were going to change one thing about what you did at Sprinkler, and the answer could be I wouldn't change anything because I did a perfect job, so that's fine. But if you were, I totally accept that because it's obviously you did a great job of getting this thing on the road. But if you were to change one thing, and you could go back in my DeLorean and we could go fix it, what would you change?
I would have spent a hell of a lot more time developing my people.
Oh, really?
I don't think I was I was a mediocre people manager, developer of talent, leader. I was new. I was so focused on the strategy execution that sometimes I forgot about that. So if I was going to do, I would have invested a heck of a lot more in the career development of everybody on my team. And we had amazing team members, and I think they'd say they learned a lot, but and they developed a lot, but I definitely would spend a lot more time helping them grow in their careers.
Wow. Awesome answer. Okay. Next question, a little bit easier. Spice Girls are reuniting.
Okay.
Okay. But without Posh Spice. Are they still the Spice Girls?
I'm going to say yes, because 80% is still significant. Like that's filibuster proof there. I'm with it. They're still
all right. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Good. So, okay. Good. Good. It was a 5-person band. Okay. Good. All right. And then last question. And this is actually a serious question for some people. Okay. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yeah. Actually, this came up the other day. I'm going to have to go with no.
No. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm gonna have to go with no.
Are you a big hot dog fan or a mediocre?
Well, I'm vegan, so if it's
not a hot dog fan.
Well, I mean, they do have like soy hot dogs; those are good. Yeah, but no, not a huge hot dog fan. But,
okay, so good. Okay,
average.
We're tabulating these responses, so we'll just wind up with a big table at the end. Okay, good.
Is this like an infographic that's going to come out later? That's going to be demand gen activity for you guys?
Yeah, most CMOs think that hot dogs are sandwiches, that kind of thing.
There you go. Forrester Wave, top one quadrant of hot dog eating CMOs lead companies more effectively than non-hot dog eating CMOs. There you go.
There we go, right? Something like that. You know, someone's out there doing that.
That's right.
Well, Jeremy, this has been great. Any last thoughts, words, or questions for me?
Wow. Well, I guess when you think of the role, how do you explain the chief experience officer role to people who may not necessarily intrinsically understand what it is or its value? How do you explain your mission?
Oh, that's a great question because and I'm still figuring it out myself. So
fair enough.
So if you got any thoughts, throw them my way. But what I'll do when I talk about what I do is that we have a philosophy that experience is the new brand, and that potentially is part of your coinage as well. And so in that type of scenario, I need to think about and look at what kind of experience our customers are having with us. So I spend actually a lot of time with customers, talking to them, working with them, telling them about what Sprinklr does, but also seeing what Sprinklr does. And where I think I bring some interesting advantages is that I'm a heavy user of the platform. Right. So I'm in there kind of messing around and sort of looking at it. And so for me, it's always about how do I think about the experience that's landing across the board. And so I'm talking to engineering, I'll be talking to sales, talking to broad groups of people. And it is a very interesting role because I am able to cross over many of the silos that typically exist in an organization. Yep. There are not a lot of CXOs out there. It's becoming more common. There's CDOs and CXOs tend to be a bit interchangeable, but typically organizations will set up these roles to try to help unify the silos and create a better collaboration environment to land a better experience with the customer. And ultimately, it's that experience that's going to keep someone coming back, buying more, or trying it for the first time. Yeah, no, that's experience is the brand. I like that. That makes a ton of sense. Like people never forget how you made them feel, right? Yeah, no, that's for sure. Well, this has been great. I'm going to say thank you and sign off. And let's connect again. Where do you live? What's your hometown? I live right outside of Washington, D.C. Okay, well, I kind of go by there once in a while. So next time, I'm in the DC area, and I'll be vaccinated as of tomorrow. Oh, nice! Fully vaccinated. So when you're all ready to go and we're kind of out in public again, let's get together face to face and have dinner or something. I would really enjoy that. Thank you. All right. Well, for the CXM experience, my guest today has been Jeremy Epstein. He's the CMO at Gtmhub and esteemed CMO and alumni of Sprinklr. And I want to thank Jeremy for being on the show today. And for the CXM experience, I'm Grad Conn, CXO at Sprinklr. And I'll talk to you next time.